as promised, we're going to draw a rendering of Jesus today. This is from early 1600s, artist named Gabriel Zehender. I don't know much about him. The great thing about this drawing is pretty simple, and it is a seated figure, which we haven't done much yet. So usually if you go to figure drawing class, the short poses will be standing, but at most schools, by the time you're ready for a long pose, like a pose that's going to last more than an hour, the model will sit down because they don't want to. It's pretty painful to remain standing for that long. A really professional model will take a standing pose sometimes for days at a time, but yeah, sorry. Focus lock. Okay. Let me just pause for a second. Okay, so we're going to start with his head, and we're paying attention to the angle, the axis of the head, and the slight amount of turn, and I'm going to just throw a little shadow on one side. It's basically an egg form. And then we're going to conceptualize, let's see, if his features are going down the front of his head like that, which I will draw up here for you. So this is sort of that's the central axis of his features. And then down here is that really important landmark of the pit of the neck. So it's below the chin, but not too far, and it's a little off to the left of the chin. And then our next central line is the sternum. And I'm going to conceptualize the opening of the neck like that, the top of the rib cage. That's a form we obviously cannot see, but it's useful to think about it. And the rib cage itself, I might think about where its boundaries are in relation to the volume of the head. So there's the volume of the head. The rib cage goes way off to the left of the head here, and here it sort of stays tucked right under the shadow side of the head like that. This pose has a large amount of twist, by which I mean the sternum is facing slightly to the right, but by the time we get to the pelvis is facing to our left. And one thing we haven't talked about much is what some artists call the bean. That's really an idea from an artist named Proco. The bean is, if you conceptualize the connected volumes of the rib cage and the pelvis. And you see how it's sort of a bean-like shape? And the twist is producing a little overlap on this side and a little bit of pulling tension on this side. So we're going to try to just draw that shape and show a little bit of this overlap here. You hate the bean?
Yeah, I can never get it right.
Oh. Not everyone likes the bean. We see there's a knee, a form of the knee, which we're going to think of as a sphere right here at the bottom margin of the bean. And I like to start with legs as kind of stick figures because it helps me to see the angles. So there's the sort of stick leg on this side, and here's the stick leg on this side. So when we look at these limbs, we're just thinking about angles and distances. Now, most people make legs too short on standing figures. Sometimes we make them too long on seated figures. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that interruption. So here's what I'm doing. I'm looking at this distance from the top of the neck to the bottom of the bean, and I'm observing that this distance from the bottom of the bean to the ground is just a little bigger than that. You see that? You always want to use that fractional thinking if you can. So there's this unit, and this unit has to be a little bit bigger. Until you get really, really competent, you have to measure things like that, because when you estimate them, more often than not, you're going to be a little wrong. And we've got, in the same way that I thought about this, the knees as circles, we can think about the angle of the shoulders, and we can think about this shoulder being a circle, and this arm is coming straight down, and this hand is sort of level with the bottom of the bean. I'm just going to draw a very simple, like that. And this shoulder is up here at quite a bit higher than this one. And here's where most of you are going to feel like this is really hard, but it really isn't that hard if you think about it. We can conceptualize this elbow as a circle, and this shoulder as a circle, and look at how they almost overlap, because this part of the arm is completely foreshortened. So let's just draw it like that, really simple, foreshortened. Notice that the top of this circle is about level with the top of the head. And then we're going to go up and to the right to the wrist, which is sort of right above the center of the head. And then this hand is tilting up. We're not going to get into that yet. So those are our main volumes, except for the lower legs, which we can now think about. This musculature in the front of the thigh, and a little less musculature under the thigh. Hardly any muscles along the front of the lower leg, a lot of muscle along the back of the lower leg. Drawing these forms gets easier the more you do it. It just becomes like writing your own name. But at first, it's not so easy. Whenever I have limbs that meet each other like this, I will pay attention to the negative shape created in between them. So this negative shape is going to help me find the contour of this lower leg. And the feet. And going right up into that knee. And finally, and I'll take a break in a second, we're going to do the side of the thigh back here. And we could look at this negative space between the arm and the body. So these are the two negative shapes that are worth contemplating here. See, there's one, and there's the other. And before we take a break, we're just going to indicate very roughly how that this guy is sitting on a form. It's barely indicated. I guess he is kind of in the clouds. I don't know. Can you sit on clouds? Yeah, I guess so. But you see how I'm giving a sense that he's supported by something. Anytime you're doing any kind of figure drawing, it's really important to show how the figure's carrying its weight. And if you draw a figure that's supported by something, even if it's just a stick that he's leaning against, you got to draw the stick. Otherwise, your drawing's not going to make sense. Okay, so that's the start of this drawing, and we'll get into more details in a minute. Okay, we're going to do the portrait in a minute, but first let's just do a little shadow map on the overall figure. Here's the top of the thigh. And as I shadow map, I'm not going to be talking about this. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to be erasing some of my construction lines. So do your best to keep up, but we're just going to, we never want to shade on top of our construction lines because you can only erase them. You can't erase through your shading. I think this guy was obviously right-handed, so I'm going to try to.
How can you tell?
The main slopes are going this direction. So I'm shading upside down. I'm just using my left hand. If you're lefty, though, you should be shading the other way. This whole arm is in shadow, except for the forearm and the hand. And this and remember, most of you are not in the habit of doing this, of laying in shadows before you have a firmer handle on the forms. But I really like to do it this way because once you can see the whole thing in terms of light and shadow, then doing the final contours is so much easier and you're going to do a better job. Here's this trapezius muscle way up here with his kind of braid laying on top of it. And yeah, those are the big shadows. There's just one more along the back of this calf and onto this heel. And that's sort of giving a reasonably good sense of the pose. And now, if you're falling behind, just don't worry. Just stay with me right now, because I want to work on the face together. It really is a beautiful little portrait. You got to remember, these artists lived in small towns for the most part, and they had to be able to invent these Jesus portraits. I bet Bodhi can figure out why that is. Why did they have to invent the Jesus portrait, Bodhi? Oh, Bodhi can't hear me? Why do you think this? Yeah, you got to take your headphones off so you can hear me. Why do you think he had to invent this portrait of Jesus? Yeah, what do you think would happen if he just hired a model to be Jesus? Yeah, well, these were relatively small population centers, so if you
Everyone would know who the guy is.
exactly, everybody would be like, "That's not Jesus, that's Finn," right? And nobody would believe it. So this is a very kind of idealized classical portrait. And we're going to make sure, see, the eyes are slightly exaggerated in size. The one little fractional thinking thing that would help us here is, so here's the edge of the head. There's the leading eye, and here's the back of the hair. You see how that leading eye is pretty much centered in the middle there? So that would be really helpful to get right. That's going to make sure we have enough separation between the eyes. And he's got a very strong olive form. It's giving him a kind of Semitic look. And this little philtrum. Little mouth and his beard. It's really hard to do a portrait at this scale. Not gonna lie, but it's something you'll get better and better at. If you look at a lot of old master drawings and paintings, there are a lot of what are called incidental characters, like background characters that are not prominently featured, but all of their expressions have to read just as accurately as the expressions of the foreground characters. And it's not easy to make it work at this size. So don't stress if you're having trouble. We're doing the best we can today. There's this little ear. And a lot of you, if you haven't done many seated figures, a lot of you are going to want to make the head just a little too small, because unconsciously you're reading this. You're reading from here to here as his overall height, And what you're going to do is unconsciously, you're going to want to make him 7 heads tall. But when he's seated, he's going to be less than that. He's probably 5 to 6 heads tall because of the pose. Okay, you'll notice I added in the trapezius here above the collarbone, and there's a little shading there. And there's some beautiful shading of this cast shadow of the arm falling across the pectoralis muscle. You see that? It's like, you don't see this in a photograph. It's like so, there's a slight exaggeration to the way the cast shadow is moving down into the valley of the sternum and then moving up across the pec on the other side. That is just a little more clearly articulated than you would find it in a living person or a photograph, in my opinion. So you'll notice I'm running out of room here because here's the pectoralis muscle moving into the sternum. And that's because this was the edge of my rib cage, but there's a lot of musculature here. The shoulder muscles are extending way out past the rib cage. So that's going to be like way out here with this little overlapping forms of muscle. And that's going to give his rib cage more of its full volume. You see what that just did? And there's also an overlap here between the bicep and the deltoid, which sort of pushes out a little more than I drew it. Okay, yep, I'll slow down. And everyone pay attention to just how short this is between here and the top of the plane change at the elbow. Okay. Here's the body of the hand. Notice this plane change between the wrist going up into the body of the hand, and then the pinky is curving down and over like that. And then this other finger is behind it. And the last 2 fingers are extending up. It's a little concerning, yeah. While I give you time to catch up with me, I just keep messing around with this head. I'm having a hard time making this look anything like Jesus.
She just has sharper features.
Well, his eyes are like twice normal size, but the artist somehow makes it work. The Allah form. Yeah, I made him.
It seems like he's sucking in like a big deep breath.
Okay, thanks. It's got this. You see this a lot in Jesus pictures, but it's. And I don't want to. This will sound weird, but like Jesus, even in this little smudgy charcoal portrait, just a few lines, he has this intense kind of combination of masculinity and femininity. It's like there's something delicate about his face, but there's also something like very powerful about it and strong. And it's like that was sort of the ideal that you see in a lot of good Jesus pictures. Yeah, he's androgynous. It's androgynous, but he's androgynous. He's also like the boss of the world, you know. He's like, I mean, in the myth. I'm not proselytizing here. I mean, you know what? Everyone used to believe that at the Last Judgment, you would meet Jesus and he would give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down, heaven or hell. So that's a pretty boss. That's a boss move. That's like a boss level, right? You gamer boys.
What are you saying right now?
That's the boss level. That's like the last stage of the game is when you meet the boss. Right? I mean, I don't play video games, but isn't that when you fight the boss? Okay, I guess you don't really.
Your shoulder round and his square.
I made the shoulder too round, Finn. Yeah, a little bit. Oh. No, it just messed up. Okay. So really, most of the detail is in the part we did already, so we're going to have time to do this. You see this detail here? It's like, you know what that is? It's a vein, okay? So that's the amazing thing about a drawing like this, is that it's so simple and obviously not something he spent days on, but he's showing a lot of detail, but only the details that he needs to tell his story. Remember, when you do a copy, it doesn't have to be perfect to be worth doing. It's just I'm going to be looking for evidence that you actually did all the steps and not that you got them all perfect. So look at the way this is a thing you always see in the old masters. You see how the bottom of the finger like flips out a little? That's always exaggerated in these master drawings. It's like something you barely notice on a living figure, but they always did that. You see what I'm talking about right there? And the way the thumb kind of flips up a little. There's always a slight exaggeration of the way the last digit kind of flips. And it's what brings the hand to life, in my opinion. Okay. So here's, again, with great subtlety, we've got the bottom of the rib cage right here, and then the first set of abdominal muscles here, and the second set here, and then sort of curving around because of that twist. And that twist is sort of pulling the navel tight, so you see that little line like that with another little crease above it. And then just this hint of the abdominals on the other side. And the mastery comes from just being able to show so much about the anatomy with so little actual detail, which just shows complete understanding. That ability not to show everything, but to select the things that contribute to the feeling of movement in the pose and the feeling of energy in the pose. And over on this side, we have this is the sort of level with the navel. Right here is the iliac crest of the pelvis. You can see the skin looks like it's sort of pulled tight around there. And then it transitions into the quadriceps right below there, which are a nice, even, smooth curve. And just a little crease right here. This is the inguinal ligament. And we can take the zoom out. Look, we're almost done. Yep. Yeah, there's really not much more detail. You can see this would have been a little more fun if we had gray paper or tan paper, because we could add our highlights. I really underestimated the volume of the soleus muscle back here. So I'm just expanding that a little, and pay attention, watch what I'm doing right now. This is the core shadow going across the tibia. That is defining that relatively angular plane and also defining the reflected light that's reflecting presumably from these clouds onto the calf. And there's the calf of the lower leg. Always look for right under the kneecap. There's a little undercut, and then it swells back out into the front of the tibia. And I think he is in the clouds. You know how we can tell? Anyone know what that is on his foot?
Oh, the nails.
The stigmata, the nail holes. Is that a word most of you have heard before?
Yeah.
And you know what word we get from that? Yes, stigma, or the verb stigmatize. Which, I don't know what to think about that. Because the stigmata on Jesus are signs of his dying for our sins and all, so I don't know why stigmatizing something has a very negative connotation. But the stigmata on Jesus are very positive, right? So I don't really know how to. You might want to ask your English teachers about that. Why the word stigmata has such a negative connotation, even though it's very positive when Jesus is involved. So that's about all we're going to have time for. Well, we have 5 minutes to work. We're going to throw in this little shadow in the background. Remember, I think Bodhi asked me how I knew he was right-handed. When you look at these cast shadows in the background and you see them all slanting this way, that's how you know he's right-handed, because he's just doing this the easiest way he can. And this dark gets a little darker right up behind here. Right-handed goes this way. Left-handed goes this way. I need a little more cast shadow onto the neck from the beard. Okay, to all my 900 subscribers, thank you so much. You don't know what it means to me that you follow my content. Although the average viewing time, I think, is about 30 seconds. But some of you are watching. Some of you are watching all the way to the end, and boy, we do appreciate it. Not that I monetize this, but I'm on the clock though, so my production values are really bad. You know, like people expect a little more entertainment. I will tell you that on this video. Because people were complaining about my monotone, and I can't really talk differently, but I did put a little reverb on this, so I think that's going to make a huge difference in my engagement.
bring them to Mr. Carroll as soon as possible. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Okay, so thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time.